I'm Margaret Ann Windsor, and I was kidnapped, brought to Moulton, Alabama in 1941. And since I've put all this up for many years now, and several a day at times, I won't go into my kidnapping and how I found out and all that. I've been telling about mind control murders. I work for doctors, and out of high school, I my first job was for it was almost my first job. I worked for Employees Finance Company, and I won't get into that. The woman left and had her baby and came back and took the job back. So I went to work for Curl Wholesale Company. It was a electronic supply place. So I did books. Um, I can remember a little bit there. I just, I had no idea about what was I was going to be writing about or any of this or my real name at the time. George, and I'm not going to mention his last name. If when they took me to Moulton, they gave me another name. They took my name and gave me the name of twins, Peggy and Carl Dempsey. And I still have to use Peggy and Dempsey. I married a Childers until I get my real name back, Margaret Ann Windsor Victoria II, the real monarch. But I worked there, and I worked there exactly a year, and I flew to, oh, for God's sake, it's in Orlando. It's where, um, well, I can't think of the name of the town there. The attorney for Casey, Anthony, that's where his office was and everything during that big trial. Anyway, I can't think of the name of it, where we were married and his brother lived. Anyway, I'm telling that, and really it's the electronic firm. I didn't have to give you all the other. I learned a little bit there, but I remember George. Let me say that. I didn't want to give his last name, but he would have been a cousin to the real Peggy. But I grew up with him, being around him, being told that he was my cousin, and grew up being told I was Peggy Dempsey. And I only found out in 1983 after the political campaign and writing the book and trying to get it published and almost being killed and all this. And so let me see if I can keep this together because I've put up about four today and this took a while and I'm very tired. Um, George was in the Navy and he actually made a phone call, not a phone call, he called, he was always overseas and he wanted to talk to his, I don't think they were married at the time, he and his wife, but they might have been. But he wanted to talk to her and he had to talk to her through a handset. Well, the person I worked for there was manager. He was a ham advocate. Well, that's what they sold also was ham sets and all that. So I'm getting into the ham set. In 1976, I'd worked for doctors. And I started learning about they'd put a chip in a heart bypass. Uh, and the next job I had was actually for the company Dixon Produce on Powers Ferry in Marietta, and their chairman of the board was Dixon Gary. I think it was Gary Dixon was his name, and this I can't remember the guy's name was the what would he have been next in line, the big boss over it all, and it was a big produce, not little thing. Anyway, they put a chip in him. So you got me going from the doctor doing the book, the doctors, but it was the one doctor that did that, and starting to do the book, and they even let me do Xerox on their Xerox machine. They gave me letter of reference and everything. And I left to try to finish the book. I was living at Moonraker, and that's where Journey's Inn restaurant was a part of that. The only time I ever lived in anything that was really, really nice. I had a nice home for a while out in Westgate, Marietta, but it was such hell going on. So much being done to us. Till anyway, Journey's End comes in to this, but there's nothing I can say right now without getting it too garbled. It's hard to piece it together, trying to tell it. But now I'm going to lose my train of thought myself. I'm so tired. Anyway, I was the doctors. So I left one doctor that had done the putting the chip in the heart bypass and go to work for the company, which was a huge company, and they were the one that had the what would he have been? Not chairman of the board, the whatever next in line. That's who they put it in, and they can control your decision making, everything, make you commit suicide. It's the Tesla files that were stolen, and create an illness or cure it. So they've had a cure for cancer, etc., all of it, or they can create it. So now then, and place you under mind control and all this. So MK Ultra was one of them. Now then, it's more widespread than you can believe, and you don't want to believe it's why it's worked. So back in '76, I lived at Treetop, and I was working for the doctors. Began working for this group of doctors, and a gentleman, a man, knocked at the door. And looking back, I shouldn't have let him in. He was moving in right next to me, and I knew the apartment was empty. And he said he wanted to use my phone, and he did. And then he said, well, he'd like to show me a ham set. And I don't know why I let him, that I went with him, but he showed me, he didn't have any furniture, he was just moving in, he said. And I don't think he ever moved in. So this was the point of it. The ham set was set up against my wall. Would have been facing my living room. And what he said and what I came to understand and know is they teach you the Morse Code. The programmers can teach you the Morse Code, and at a low level you're not aware you're getting. But I also found out that they can put it at a level to where you, and if you tried to tell a doctor, they would automatically tell you were schizophrenic and you'd be treated for mental illness. It would be shocking to you if you ever, this was made, the media, which is controlled by the Illuminati, the global government, were made to tell the truth. Once in their life, they're the people that their jobs are to tell the truth. They should be locked up. And this is all of them. It's been controlled since they kidnapped me and before, the media. Okay, so I've told you the background on it. It's that easy. Like the dog whistle, the dog can hear, but you can't. So it's done at that level, or they can up it, and the person thinks they're hearing voices. If it's done at a low level, they never know what happened to them, like the shooter at Virginia Tech, the Aurora, Colorado, and they actually put him in prison, in mental hospital, and treated him for mental illness. Can you imagine if you had cancer and somebody was doing this to you, or you were diabetic? There would be all hell to pay. But this is a way to sidetrack from using the court system. You use the mental health and you discredit, and they're not going to tell you the truth. There are some people telling it. Let me say that it's my understanding, and I've read it, and it certainly makes sense to me, that it's as easy as going to a computer and it's sending signals. If you have the right, and I don't know all that, brain waves or your social security, how to get to you, or I don't know if they even have to have a chip in you. Someone asked me did I know who all had chips. I do know that they've put them in babies a long time ago. This goes back before 1958. They put them in agents that apply for the, let's just take as an example, the Secret Service can have a chip in them and be programmed to go and apply for the Secret Service. They can control your jobs, where you're going to get a job, and you don't even know it. Okay, they can have you go to work for the FBI. They can have you go to work for the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm, or the Treasury Department. So I'll give you the gist of it. And it's worked because they play the crazy card, which is a friggin' lie. But they can do it with computers. It's signals. And I recently saw an article on it. I didn't read it through, but that was the gist of it. I was trying to think there was something else, and I didn't want to put this up until I had it. Anyway, I did the book, and I tried to get it published, and got the letter from the FBI, ongoing investigation, national security involved. June the 23rd, which is my father's birthday, 1979. Lived at Moonraker Apartments, 70, moved in there in 78, lived a year exactly, moved into Laurelwood up the street. That's where I got the letter from the FBI, and almost got killed and lost my apartment was stolen. And they almost killed me April Fool Day. I was taken across the state line. I remember telling Lina Dempsey, I hadn't found out my real name at the time, but I've been told prior to then that I always knew who I am, but they didn't complete the sentence and answer me, so it was puzzling to me. I found out in 83, after I was in a campaign to replace the Dr. Larry McDonald. He was a U.S. congressman and doctor from Atlanta, and he was one of them that I wrote about in the hospital there. It was part of the information was given through a Dr. Robicher, who was one of the few decent men. He was head of psychiatry and law at Emory. And I'm not going to go into now back what I had in the book, all of it, but In Power of Psychiatry was one of his last books before they killed him, is how they killed him. And he had 10 of my cases in the back chapter. He didn't mention me, but they were the 10 of them. And one of his people that came to him, Gene Strokerman, he referred to my attorney, Eugene Kaiser, who was a former Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia district attorney. And she was shot at Piedmont Hospital, Larry McDonald's hospital, on Christmas Eve. She was suing a Dr. Cohen, and I believe his name was Cohen, and ended up Gene Kaiser sent her, well, I don't know if he didn't send her there. He was representing her. And she went to work there for Dr. Oh God, it got horrible. Dr. Hardiman, he's a psychiatrist. And he worked for Peachford, which, by the way, Daryl Ray, doctors out there, Dr. Scott, Daryl Ray, and Stewart. So help me, they were the good guys. Okay, Carol Johnson was head of social, she had a good job there, okay, director. Now then, Hardiman hired Gene Strokerman, and she was shot on Christmas Eve, all up against the wall. They blew her by the Christmas tree. Now then, this gets wild. You get what was going on at Piedmont Hospital. I'm sitting here putting it up this many years later, and God knows I've been through hell. I don't know how I made it this long, and I'm going to have to shut up because this is night, and this is where I've been living over a year, and people can probably hear me, and they don't like to hear what's uncomfortable, okay? They want to pretend unless their child's on death row, and that's what's happened to these people who are programmed. There's a list, and there's a list of actors who have been killed. Robin Williams didn't just commit suicide. That was a program suicide. they make you have heart attacks, etc. How do you prove it? The ones I told about are done in patterns, and some of them, beyond a doubt, can be proven. So I guess that's all I was going to say now. I tried to tell. But the thing in Charlottesville, I'm going to mention again, that's where Anastasia was killed. I was driving Larry Flint car. I was in that campaign, and program shooter shot him. And he flew me out there and helped me when Larry McDonald, the plane he was on, went down the KAL in '83, August 31st. And there's questions of whether he was even on the plane or they took it down. There's 260 plus went down and drowned en route from Juneau, Alaska to Seoul, South Korea. And Richard Nixon, the former so-called president, was on that flight and taken off just prior to its takeoff. So they knew it was going down. So I'm skipping around. I wanted to get to the Charlottesville. Larry Flint furnished me a car after he helped me in the campaign, and that's the last I heard from him till I turned the car in and spoke to him once, and that was it. And I was driving through Charlottesville, never thinking or knowing I'd end up back here in Salem or Roanoke County, Troutville. It's all in the same area, 15 miles apart. And I lived on the Appalachian Trail there, up and down it and around and off the Blue Ridge Parkway, etc. Living in hiker shelters when I could, freezing, starving, just have a place to be. Except the side of the road. People were told not to help me. Now I've said that and I'm going to lose my train of thought here. I'm tired and I guess I've said that. Anyway, let me see if I can get back. It was Anastasia. I was driving the car, the last car I've had now. Been on foot, hoofing it, begging for rides through agencies and everything. And anyway, Anastasia, there are no what, I can't even think right now, so I guess I'm going to have to put this away anyway for tonight. Coincidences. I'm driving through Charlottesville on a Sunday, either the 4th or 6th of 1984. About 9 o'clock in the morning, I believe it was, and I heard that Anastasia died. They didn't say she was murdered. They haven't told that. She was. Manahan was married to a professor at the University of Virginia, and he actually, how she got locked up was illegal. It was murder. And that's all I'm going to say right at the moment. God knows I live in fear of anything and everything being done to me if what's being done to me isn't bad enough. Anyway, she was murdered, plain and simple. And that was, and it really was Anna. I ended up coming back here with no car. I'm skipping all in between because I want to get to this. Charlottesville's had a lot of things happen there that have not been told the truth about it. Not just that about Anastasia. But I wanted to get to this, and I'm going to stop. And I've told enough about some links to try to show you the patterns that the murders were done in that you can prove it. I'm going to get to this one. I don't have to be in the spot. The murders, obviously, the rural, all those, and they go way back. They're not just done in groups, or they can knock people off when they want to. Let me put it that way. Make it look like natural death by natural cause. Anyway, what I wanted to tell was I came here